Welcome to this edition of Church Answers, and specifically, welcome to the Rayner Report. There's so many different things that we provide for you, and some of these may seem to have somewhat of a secular flavor to them. So when we start talking about a dynamic strategic plan, the first reaction may be, well, that's what businesses do. That's what secular organizations do. Why does the church need a dynamic strategic plan? First of all, let me explain the words. Dynamic means that it's something that is ever-changing. Strategic means that we are moving in a certain direction. Plan means that we are being wise stewards of what we have been given by God. So think about that for just a moment. Strategic, you're moving in a direction as God wills. Dynamic is ever-changing as the God of all creation remains constant. And plan, you are using what a great plan. You are being a wise steward of your resources. So do you see now why a strategic plan, it's used in the secular world, but it can be best used because God is the giver of all good things, and He has given us our resources. Now it is up to us to do something with these resources. You remember the parable of the talents for certain. One of the servants went and buried his talent and didn't do anything with it. The other two went and reproduced their talents. And so what did the master say to the servants? He said the other two who had reproduced their talents were wise and good. But the one who did nothing, who hid it away, was an evil servant. And so I am trying to let us take the talents or the stewardship that we have been given and do something with it for the glory of God. Here is the reality. Most churches are not healthy. Why are they not healthy? Because they are not moving in a great commission or great commandment direction. Why aren't they doing that? Because they have gotten in the routine of doing things the way they've always done them. Church has become a litany of activities and busyness. It has become one program or one thing after another. And there is no intentionality. There's no movement forward in a direction that would be the best and wisest stewardship of what God has given us. And so when we start talking about creating a dynamic strategic plan for your churches, we have to realize that this is actually a plan to take churches to greater health, because most of the churches in America are not healthy. I said in a previous Rayner report that about 90% of churches across the United States are either declining or they are growing at a pace that is not as great as the community in which they're located. In other words, they're losing ground. So most of our churches are not healthy, and one of the reasons that most of our churches are not healthy is that they are not moving in a clear and dynamic direction. So, as we talk about a strategic plan, think of yourself as the servant that has been given talents. Think of yourself as the servant who's been given a mission to do something with that which you have been given. Think of yourself as fulfilling the Great Commission and the Great Commandment and following God down His path. So, healthy churches can become unhealthy, and then they need a plan to return to health. So most churches are not healthy, but secondly, most church leaders have not been taught leadership skills. I'm an advocate of seminaries and Bible colleges. I've attended 6 years of a very good seminary. And I know that there are many Bible colleges as well. And there's only so much that a seminary or a Bible college can teach. And so they, by very design, have to focus more on the classical disciplines like New Testament, Old Testament, systematic theology, and Hebrew and Greek. And so with that focus, what then gets kind of moved out of the training for these future pastors and staff members and other church leaders is they do not have much practical or leadership training. And so when it comes time to lead a church or to lead a budget or to move a church in a certain direction, they don't know how to be the type of leader to provide the vision for that strategic plan. And here is where we come back to the parable of the talents. No direction, lack of direction is poor stewardship. It means that you've been given something by God, but you're not doing anything with it. Or perhaps you're doing something with it, but you're like the hamster on the spinning wheel. You just keep going around and around and around without any productive action. Quite frankly, I've taken church consultations where I have seen churches that have this wide, broad, and deep list of activities. And their people are busy 24/7, or if not that, at least during the day and some evenings. And they're constantly doing things, and the activities, and they go on and on. But then you look at their impact in the community, and many people in the community have never heard of them. Very few people are being reached for Christ. They don't have a clear direction. They think that busyness is equivalent to obedience. But busyness without the right direction is poor stewardship. And so I'm hoping and praying that as we go over this strategic plan for churches, that you can be a better steward of that which God has given you. Now, why else do we need a strategic plan? Direction and ministry placement must be aligned. Now, let me say that one more time. Direction and ministry placement must be aligned. Let's clarify that for just a moment. Let's say that the church has a fairly clear direction where she should go. And it has a good sense of where we should reach people and disciple people. But you've got people who are doing things where they are not equipped, or where they're not gifted, or where they do not have the ability to do something. What a strategic plan does, it lines up the resources of people with the direction the church needs to go. In fact, a strategic plan that does not include people in it is not a strategic plan at all. Many years ago, Jim Collins wrote another secular book called Good to Great. And in that book, he talks about one of the principles of great organizations, particularly in this case, Fortune 500 companies, is they get the right people on the bus, and they get the right people on the bus in the right seats. That is his metaphor for saying, get people where they're gifted. Move them in a place where they have talents. Move them in a place where they have great passion. And as a result, you will see more productive activity. Direction, ministry placement, getting people in the right seats at the right time for the right ministry is absolutely critical. Another reason that you need a strategic plan is financial giving follows direction. Financial giving follows direction. Why do people give to any organization? Because they believe in it. But it is more than just believing in it as an organization. They believe in the direction of the organization. They believe in the mission of the organization. They not only believe where the organization is today, they believe where the organization will be tomorrow. And so to help those organizations move toward that tomorrow, they give them money. They give them resources. I've heard many pastors and other church leaders say, what's the number one way that I can increase the giving in the church, or I can exhort my members to give more? And the simple answer is, have a clear vision. Have something where they know where you are going and they understand the direction of the church. The frank reality is that in order for a strategic vision to be implemented, there will be some resources necessary. Some of those resources are people. Some of those resources are time. But inclusive in that is that some of those resources are money as well. So get the financial giving to follow the direction. Don't ask people to give and then provide a vision. Provide the vision and watch the giving flow naturally. Keep this also in mind as another point of a strategic plan. Buildings are not equal to a strategic plan. Many times we have a building program and we say our building program is our strategic plan. It's not. The buildings are a tool toward accomplishing the strategic plan. They're one of the sets of resources that you use in order to see the strategic plan accomplished. So when you hear someone say we have a vision to build a facility, the real issue is we have a vision to do this mission, and the physical facilities or the building will be a part of that strategic plan. It is not an end in itself. Another reason you should have a strategic plan is that motivation and morale are often shaped by clear direction. Motivation and morale are often shaped by clear direction. Some of the most productive church members, some of the greatest giving church members, some of the greatest ministering church members, some of the most enthusiastic church members are a part of a church where there is a clear direction. Not only is the vision clear, but the strategic plan which carries out the vision is clear as well. And so, if you want to see those who are enthusiastic, that word enthusiasm comes from two little Greek words, in theos, which means in God. So to be enthusiastic means you're on the page that God is on, and you are in God. And so enthusiasm, motivation, and morale will be shaped by clear direction. That clear direction can come from a strategic plan accomplishing the vision. Now hear this last point, and hear this one well. A slogan is not sufficient. Many leaders think that if we just put a few words on the wall or a few words on the website or a few words in a vision statement or a slogan or a mission statement, that we have done our duty, that that's all the church needs, or really that's the main thing the church needs. And so oftentimes we spend hours and days and weeks and even months coming up with that cute little slogan or that impactful little vision statement, and we say, that's it. Well, it can be good. It can be a wonderful guideline. But the fact of the matter is, a vision statement, a slogan, is just the beginning. That may be the what. What is it we really want to do? But then the next question you have to answer is, how are we going to do that? And that is the purpose of a strategic plan. So I hope you're hearing clearly from me in this introduction to strategic planning that it is more than just a secular model. If anything, from my perspective, the secular world borrowed the concept of stewardship from the Bible, and they built the strategic plan in their way. We're going to turn that around, and we're going to see what the Bible says and what churches should be doing with a strategic plan as well. So, this first session has been a brief introduction to why you need a strategic plan and to help you understand that a strategic plan is really biblical. I know that we have not gotten into any of the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty details of what a strategic plan is, and that's why we divide these into two sessions. So, I'm going to wrap this up right now. You can take a short break or a long break, whatever you want, and you can take time and then come back for a next session, which is going to be a little bit longer, and we're going to go over the strategic plan itself, how to conduct one, how to construct one, and how to see it carried out. I'll look forward to seeing you in session 2 of creating a dynamic strategic plan for your church. Welcome to part 2 of creating a dynamic strategic plan for your church. In this particular session, we're focusing on creating the strategic plan. We're focusing upon implementing it. We're focusing upon doing the things that actually make it work. And the first session, which was a bit shorter, we really just focused upon some of the principles behind it. Why do you need a strategic plan? Is it biblical? What should we be doing with those biblical truths? And what should we do answering the question why? Now we're getting a little more specific, and we are talking about the how. For some of you, you may not have had management training or business training or anything that might have included strategic planning. Some of you may have. And I understand that there are different ways to talk about strategic planning. The terminology is similar from person to person, expert to expert, but it is also different. So I'm going to provide my terms, and I'm going to provide my nomenclature. It doesn't mean that it's the only way, but it's just one thing that you should be able to use. It should be one of those handles that you can hold on to help you understand the strategic plan. Now, as we talk about implementing and creating the strategic plan, what we are saying is we want you to be able to do something that is highly actionable. Several years ago when I was in an organization, I came to that organization and they had a strategic plan. They had several years' worth. And it was these volumes that were literally 4 and 5 inches thick. And I looked through them and I began to just go through page by page. It was wonderfully done. There had been hundreds of hours of work and research put into it, and I was just amazed at all the expertise that flowed into it, except there was one problem. After it was complete, it went on a shelf, and no one ever looked at it again. I may have been one of the first people to look at it in several years, and I looked at it, and guess how many of the strategic plan ideas were fulfilled? And the number is 0. Why? Because we spent hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours working on the document, but we did not get it simple and in a way that it could be executed. So I'm not giving you this session just to give you some type of big strategic plan to put on a shelf. I hope I'm giving you something that is simple, not because your mind is simple, but because it needs to have clarity and it needs to be something that you can communicate to your church members as well. Now, here's what I'm going to do. You will see on the screen the strategy funnel. And we're going to start broadly at the top, and then we'll get more and more narrow as we focus on specifics. And really, we're going to put the strategy as the third level of the pyramid. The pyramid starts off broad, and by the time it gets to the third level, it is a bit more narrow. We could spend a significant amount of time on each of these areas of the funnel, but I want you to focus mostly on the latter portion of the funnel. We'll talk about the others, and we will get to those, but we really want to be focusing on the overall strategic plan. So at the top of the funnel, you see this particular item on the screen. Vision. Vision. Now, what is vision? Vision is a broad understanding of the direction and priorities of the church. It's a broad understanding of the direction and priorities of the church. It doesn't get into much detail. It can be a simple statement or part of a sentence. And here's what I would do. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about developing a vision, but I would recommend to you, because we dealt a lot with it in the book Simple Church, that if you have not read Simple Church by Eric Geiger and me, that you would go read that book, because we advocate that the vision, the mission statement, should actually become your action plan or your process of discipleship. So that thought really coincides with what I am talking about here when I talk about a strategic plan. But you got to start at the top. What is our broad vision? Our broad vision may be to love others and to win the lost and to minister to the community. Something very broad, but at least it provides direction. So before you even think about the strategy, you have to have the vision. Let's move down just a little bit on the strategy funnel. And right below the vision is goals. Now we're focusing in a little more, and that's why the funnel is getting just a little bit tighter. You know what goals are. They are things that you want to accomplish. There are metrics that you want to hit. There are responsibilities that you want to see carried out. Now, here's just a principle when you are putting together a strategic plan. Fewer goals are better than a lot of goals. Now, why is that? Because if we have too many goals, we will be going in too many directions, scattering our resources, and creating confusion. Even for large churches, I recommend that they keep their goals to a minimum. I recommend that they maybe only have one goal, or 2, or 3, or 4. Now, here's another thing about goals. They have to be SMART. That's an acronym, SMART. What does the acronym mean? S, specific. They can't just be these goals that are ambiguous, that are out there that no one really knows if you've hit them. Measurable. I would recommend that they even become a number if there's any way to get them to a number. Not all of them can be numerically measured, but I would recommend that you come up with something that can be measurable. That's the M. S, specific. M, measurable. A, achievable. I know of one church that had about a 200 average attendance, and they said, let's go after this audacious goal, and we're going to have 1,000 in attendance at the end of the year. Well, the community was not growing that fast. It was not that big. It was a laudable goal to go from 200 to 1,000, but it really wasn't that achievable. God can do whatever He wants to in His plan and His miraculous power, But the reality of it is that church was probably not going to grow by a factor of 5 and grow from 200 to 1,000. So what happened? The church got discouraged. They had a goal, and they didn't even come close to it. They ended up with about 250 in attendance, which in itself is wonderful because that's a 25% increase. But it didn't seem so great because they had this unreasonable, unachievable goal. So when you're looking at a goal, make certain it's not only specific, not only measurable, but it is achievable as well. Closely related to that is realistic. Do you have all the resources that you need? Do you have everything to make this take place? Or is it unrealistic? I mean, is it realistic to say, okay, we've got this facility and we're going to use double the space in it? That's not realistic. It would only be if you're using double services or something to that effect, but you can't have two groups of people in the same place at the same time. That's not realistic. So make certain that it's not only specific, the S, measurable, the M, achievable, the A, but realistic as well. And then the final part of the SMART acronym is T. Usually that's called timely. I would call it time sensitive or time dated. In other words, there is a specific time when this will be done. When we plan Church Answers, we know the date that we're going to release them being all of the segments from what you're watching right now. So we have to back up and say, okay, when do we have to have our videos done? When do we have to have the downloads done? Because we have dates, we're able to say, this is when everything will be accomplished, and it will be. What happens if you don't have a date? What happens if it's not timely? You procrastinate. You say, we'll do this next year. You say, we have more important things to do. Only when you have a date, a timely goal, a deadline, will you reach that goal. So understand goals. They have to be specific, S, measurable, M, achievable, A, realistic, R, and timely, T. Let's look at an example of one. You remember the example I just gave about attendance? Let's just move the numbers just around a little bit. Let's say that the goal is to see worship attendance increase from 225 to 250 in 12 months. You know, it's about a 10% increase. That's pretty healthy. So what is it? Is it specific? Yes, it's very specific. It is talking about a certain level of worship attendance. Is it measurable? Yes, at the end of this, we can see exactly where worship attendance is. Is it achievable? The community is growing by 8%, so 10%, it's a little optimistic, aggressive, but yeah, it's achievable. Is it realistic? We do have the resources to do this. We do have the people who can reach out in the community and get it done. Is it timely? Yeah. 1 year from now, worship attendance will go from 225 to 250. That is one example of a SMART goal. Now, you would have to back up to the vision to say, what's God's purpose behind this? And you would have to find out that reaching people may be one of the purposes, or the Great Commission might be one of the purposes. And so it's not merely a numerical goal, but it is a goal that ties in to the vision. Okay, let's go down the funnel just a little bit further. Let's go to strategy. What is strategy? Strategy is your map to fulfill the goals. Strategy is your map to fulfill the goals. Let's go back to the example of worship attendance increasing from 225 to 250 in 1 year. What can you do with that goal? Well, you may have two strategies. You may have, we're going to increase intentional inviting of guests to church. That'd be a good one, because you know the more people you invite, the more guests will come. The more guests you have, the more likelihood of higher attendance, and therefore that's one good possible way to increase attendance. You might have another strategy in there. Increase the frequency of the attendance of members. If members are attending 2 to 3 times a month, you may try to do something to increase and exhort the members to attend 3 to 4 times a month. If you do that, the attendance will increase 2 ways. So now you have 2 strategies, 2 very dynamic strategies. We're going to have a plan to invite guests more. Now keep in mind, this is just under one goal. And we're going to have a strategic plan to increase the frequency of members and other regular attenders. Okay, now this is beginning to get a little bit clearer. You have a vision. We want to reach more people with the Great Commission. You have goals. One of the ways that we will know we're doing that is that our worship attendance will increase from 225 to 250. Now you have a strategy to carry out those goals. You have two, as a matter of fact. You're going to invite more guests, and you're going to try to increase the frequency of the attendance of members. Is that it? Nope. You've only just begun. Because, yeah, you have a vision. Yeah, you have a goal. And also you have the strategy to fulfill that goal. But if you stop there, nothing happens. Because all you're going to say is, I want you inviting guests more, and I want you members and regular attenders to come more frequently. That's not going to work. So now we move a little bit more to a more narrow part of the strategy funnel, and that is called the action plan. Action plan is just what it sounds like. It is a plan to put in action the strategy which fulfills the goals, which fulfills the vision. You see how I'm going up and then back down again on the vision funnel. So, how can we increase intentional inviting of guests to church? Well, one way you might do it is you could develop a new resident ministry. And when people move into the community, you could have people that take them welcome baskets, or you send them emails or letters or whatever is appropriate. And there are a lot of services out there that can tell you the names and the addresses of people when they move in. Obviously, you don't want to just come in cold and catch them unaware. But if we let them know our church is here and we send them some kind of gift or some kind of welcome, that might be a way to get people coming into the church, more intentional inviting. So do you hear what I'm saying? That's one of the ways, that's an action plan to fulfill the goal. Well, what's another action plan? Another action plan is to give people in the church invitation cards. What's an invitation card? Looks just like a business card. And it might have the church name on one side, address, website, and then on the other side it may have worship attendance times. It may be all on one side. And you tell members, get a stack of these and just give them out to coworkers, give them out when you're in a restaurant, give them out in all kinds of different places. Now, just a little caution. This is just one of my caveats. Let's imagine you're in a restaurant and you want to leave an invitation card, one of those little business type cards for your server. Please leave a good tip. Don't be that type of Christian that invites someone to church and then tips with pennies instead of dollars. Let your witness be a stewardship, and let your stewardship be a witness. So please do so. That's a caveat. I just have seen invitation cards used poorly. In fact, just a few minutes ago, right before this video, I was looking at an email from a church, and the timing of it was right before Easter. And they were sending out invitation cards to their members for the Easter service. There was one specific time to invite people to an Easter service. So it doesn't have to be year-round. It can be for a specific event, or it can be year-round. So keep in mind what we're doing. We have a vision. We're going to call it the Great Commission vision. We have a goal. Part of the way we're going to carry this out is to increase attendance from 225 to 250. We have a strategy. Increase intentional inviting of guests to church. And we have two action plans: develop a new resident ministry and give invitation cards to members. Well, let's go back and let's look at the action plan for the second part of the strategy. Increase frequency of attendance of members. What can we do there for our action plan? Well, we can have a real push in our church to increase small group attendance from 60% to 70%. What happens if a person goes to a small group? They become a more committed member of the church. What happens if they are a more committed member of the church? Their frequency of attendance increases. So I was about to say just moving someone to a small group will make that take effect. It's not just. When you move someone to a small group, when you see someone move from becoming a worship attender only to also a small group or Sunday school class attender, you will see them become more committed and, as a result, more frequent attendees. So you're getting the picture just a little bit. We're looking at this funnel, and we're getting more and more narrow. We're starting off on the vision, the broad understanding. We want to reach more people. The goals, and in this case, we decided to have just one simple goal, to increase worship attendance from 225 to 250. Strategy, we're going to invite more people to church, and we're going to try to increase the frequency of the attendance of members. And then we came out with several action plans, 2 for increasing the invitation of guests to church, and then 3 for increasing the frequency of attendance. So let's look at the other 2 on increasing the frequency of attendance to members. Another thing that you can do is you can clarify attendance expectation in the new members class. For example, I know of one church that says, unless providentially hindered, which means you're sick or you're incapacitated or you're in a place where there's just no church, which is unlikely, you will attend worship somewhere. Even if you're out of town, you get in the habit of attending church. So you can clarify those attendance expectations in a new members class. Another thing that you can do is you can try to get more people involved in ministry. Like moving people to a small group, moving people to involvement in ministry means that they are going to be more committed to the church. And once again, greater commitment to the church means that people are more likely to attend. Therefore, all of these things are working toward the vision, reach more people for Christ. All of these elements are really trying to accomplish the goals. The goal in this case, worship attendance increasing from 225 to 250. All of these elements have a strategy to them, twofold strategy here: increase intentional inviting of guests to church, increase frequency of attendance of members. And now I've gone over 5 action plans, 2 for the invitation of guests to church and 3 for the increased frequency of attendance of members. Are we done yet? Not exactly. We've got just a few more things that I would like to add to this strategic plan. Next, you need to know who's in charge of each action plan. You need a responsible person. That is the element in the strategy funnel that I call responsibility. In the organization where I work, we call them champions. Those are the people that have responsibility to see something is executed. Hear me well. If you don't have a person in charge of carrying out something, it will likely not be carried out. You need one person who is ultimately accountable and responsible. So who's in charge of each action plan? Are we done yet? Not exactly. We keep on going down the strategy funnel, and we see that we need resources. We can't just tell people to go out and do something unless we are certain they have all the resources they need. Do they need training? Do they need invitation cards? Do they need some kind of tracking system? What is it that they need in order to carry out the vision, goal, strategy, action plan? What kind of resources? Once you deem those responsible for it, what are the resources that they need to carry out? Finally, we get to the narrowest part of the strategy funnel, accountability. Now we have to ask the question. This may be something that comes a year later or 6 months later. We have to ask this question: how have we done with the vision, with the goal, with the strategy, with the action plan, with the responsible person, with the resources we've given them? Now we're to the part of accountability. Each action plan should have specific and measurable accountability. One example, you're giving out cards to the membership to invite people. How many membership cards have been given out? That's one level of accountability. In the other one, increased frequency of attendance of members, has the membership class been changed to reflect the goal that members are to attend unless providentially hindered? You see where I'm going with this? This is asking the question, have we done what we are supposed to do with the responsible person, with the resources he or she needs? Now, here's the good thing about watching this course on streaming video. This is a lot of material packed into a relatively short time. If you have never studied strategic planning and this just went by like a blur, look at the funnel. Make certain that you understand every element of the strategy funnel. Do you know the vision? Do you know the goals, the strategy, the action plan, the responsibility, the resources, and the accountability? This can be a dynamic tool to help you carry out the vision that God has for your church. Don't merely look at this or even be critical of it in such a way that you say it is a secular tool that has no basis. Once again, I would argue that this is a biblical concept that has been adopted by the secular world. We need to bring it into the truth of Scripture and look at the parable of the talents for what it is and to understand that strategic planning can indeed be a great tool for great stewardship, for great direction in your church. Now, let me finish this up by just going over some principles of strategic planning. This plan, number one, needs to reflect reality. It does, you want to have faith and you want to have ambitious goals, but it needs to reflect reality. The plan needs to be clear, not something that is just off the wall and most people don't think it will ever be accomplished. The plan needs to be simple. Just as not only clear, but simple as well. It's better to do just one or two things than to try to do a boatload of things. The plan also must have ownership and buy-in. There must be people responsible and must be people on board for it. And hear this well, this plan should not be time-consuming. Not the developing of the plan, maybe carrying it out may take a while, but we spend many times too much time working on putting something together rather than executing it. We need to spend more time the doing than putting it together and conceiving. Another principle is this plan is action-oriented. It's moving members to do something for the good of the church and for the glory of God. It is something that is there and dynamic and clear and action-oriented. And speaking of that word dynamic, it is also that, dynamic. And what I mean by that is don't be stuck on a strategic plan. Things change. Situations evolve. There's all types of variables, so you may have to change the strategic plan even in the midst of the period in which it is being measured. So here is somewhat of your assignment. If you didn't get all of this the first time, again, go back and view this video again and make sure you have it all. And then think about how you can do a strategic plan in your church as your lead pastor or as a ministry area or as a lay leader, maybe a small group or Sunday school class leader. Look at what you can do in your specific area. I hope now that you can see that this can be an incredible tool for churches to be more efficient and doing what God has told them to do with a greater sense of stewardship. I now hope that you can take this and take it back to your church and say, we are going to have God's strategic plan for our next future. This has been an incredibly heartwarming and exciting time for me because I'm talking about churches moving forward. So continue to stay with us in Church Answers. Continue to come back for each of the segments, and specifically, we'll be back at the first of each month for this time of the Rayner Report. And I want you to continue to go with us as we talk about what God is doing in the churches. And as you come here and we, in His wisdom, attempt and continue to provide church answers.